Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Benita Chaco. Welcome to day 2 of the third edition of Digipub Week. Digipub Week is the online chapter of a Digipub World Convention, India's first event dedicated to online publishers, held annually since 2017. Before we move on, we'd like to thank our presenting partner, MGID, and associate partner and Beyond Media for their support. Can we please have the AV?
You are on mute.
You're on mute, Benita.
Thank you. Moving on, the topic for today's session is the brand safety conundrum. Why should publishers worry about brand safety as much as advertisers? On the panel, we have Amitabh Bishnoi, Vice President Digital at the New Indian Express, Amlan Pati, Marketing Head, Digital and E-Commerce, Gavin Care, Bharat Khatri, Chief Digital Officer, APAC at Omnicom Media Group, Mayura Shreyams Kumar, Director, Digital Business at Mathrubhumi, and Pankaj Sharma, Chief Executive Officer and Director, MGID India. The session will be moderated by Ashwini Gangar, Managing Editor at afaqs. Welcome, everyone. Over to you, Ashwini.
Thank you, Benita. Okay, hi, everybody. Welcome, panelists. Warm welcome. Hi, audience. Thank you all very much for being here today. Welcome to day 2 of Digipub Week. Now, day 2 is a very nice place to be. We are flanked today by discussions on monetization, that was yesterday, and contextual advertising, that's going to happen tomorrow. But today, the topic of discussion is brand safety. Now, I just want to remind the audience that Digipub was first held, like Benita mentioned, in 2017. And we've had many editions since then. It's very interesting for me to note how some topics of discussion are recurring, like monetization related themes or challenges facing regional language publishers, for example. These are what we call perennial topics. And that tells us something about the importance of these subjects in the universe of web publishing. But each time, some topics are new and unique to that edition. And those are interesting as well, because that gives us insight into the flavor and problems of that season, as it were. And today's topic of discussion, that's brand safety, is one such. Now, while it's a very storied and well-documented topic in general on the web, it's a first at Digipub. And I'm very happy to be discussing it with my brilliant panel today. Now, I'll just, a quick throwback, a personal throwback. I've moderated a session on brand safety at an afaqs convention on the business of online video called Video Next a few years ago. And that really stayed with me because in the context of digital video and YouTube is pretty much where the concept of brand safety was born. That's like the birthplace of this issue. But it's so interesting to note how today it's equally relevant in the web publishing space as well. It's not just about YouTube and safety. It's also about publishers and safety. And that's what we're here to analyze today. Now, I have with me two publishers, a digital media buyer, a digital marketer, and of course, MGID, a native and performance advertising platform. It's a wonderful assorted panel. And, I have lots of questions. I'm sitting on many questions. And audience, please keep tossing your questions as well. And I'll try and get to them towards the end of the session. But before we get to any specific questions, I just want to invite my panel to take about 2-3 minutes each and give their overview, give your brief opening remarks on the subject. Now, quickly introduce the platforms, brands, companies that you represent, and give us an overview of brand safety in the context of web publishing. Let's lens it correctly. Talk about brand safety as you understand it. Is it just an advertiser's problem, or is it the publisher's problem as well today? What do you make of it? And we'll get to solutions to brand safety and other intricacies later on. So save all that juice for later. But for now, let's just have a nice round of opening remarks. So we can start with Mayura.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here as well. It's definitely an honor. So my name is Mayura. I'm from a group called Matrabhumi. We are predominantly a newspaper that publishes in Malayalam, but we also have FM channels, TV, digital. We have a publishing house as well. We're also a legacy organization. We're going to hit 100 years next year, so we're all extremely excited for that. I think you put it right there, Ankita, because it is, as a publisher, you are also extremely responsible for the kind of messages you put out there. Let it be in terms of understanding, like, for example, all the social, norms that are coming today, employee safety, environment safety. It's very important that as, publishers or any company, we, as a brand, that we do align with that and ensure that, because people are getting more brand conscious, even when it comes to, spaces like this. So that's number one. I would also say that we have a big responsibility in terms of, giving the correct information out there. So the minute that you try sharing, propaganda or fake news, I don't think advertisers would be extremely comfortable enough to advertise in your platform. Like how I wouldn't be comfortable enough advertising our platform in various random sites that we don't even know about. So technology has grown, let it be even during the print times, even today, how your brand is placed, where it's placed is extremely important, because that's your DNA and that speaks about who you are in the market. And by the end of the day, that's who people respect about you, how your brand is and how you communicate. Just one more point before I close. Brands today have to be extremely vocal. So if there's any slamming that happens to you in the market, or if there is, any you feel that you've been placed wrong, you should be vocal about it. And you should, as I said, also, there are a lot of changes happening in the society, keep abreast to that. So brand is your voice, and I think that should be safeguarded for yourself and for the people associated with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, Mayura. Bharat, why don't you go next with your opening remark? Just talk about brand safety as you understand it.
I think it's nothing new. To be very honest, it's been more than a decade since the inception of some of the open source platforms where there was a UGC content being hosted. This is where the whole concept and the debate started around brand safety, brand suitability. I think brand safety is now more of a hygiene. And I recall the quote with Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, said that your brand is what other people say about you when you are not in the room. Similarly, when you are advertising, whether it's digital, TV, offline, wherever you advertise, it's all about in what context, in what environment your brand is being showcased. So from a safety lens, something like Mayura covered, definitely platforms which are not running any propaganda, which are purely showing the transparent side of the content, more suitable content when it comes to around the brand where you're advertising. So just to give you a quick context, let's say we manage a lot of liquor-based brands, and they would never want to advertise in any environment or content where there is around kids or anything which is below the drinking age of that particular market. Right. So both from a safety and a suitability, I think there is a lot of maturity which has already been done in the market over the past 1 decade. But somewhere down the line, I think what you mentioned, it's pretty much right that as a community or ecosystem, the whole burden of this brand safety and suitability is now being passed on to the publisher ecosystem on their shoulder.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very safely, I think advertisers have decided to cherry pick which content they want to advertise, which channel, which environment they would be more safe and suitable. And every brand has their own, what you can say, a compatible line in terms of what level they want to advertise on. And similarly, I think from an ecosystem or a governing body, let's say we have IAB, Interactive Advertising Bureau, and we also have Media Rating Council, MRC. These are global standard bodies who have also defined frameworks both for advertiser as well as for publishers that these are certain frameworks and standards which everyone should follow. So more or less, I think today we would love to deep dive and understand with my fellow panelists what are some of the key decisions that we as a whole industry is taking to bring more suitability and safety, not just from a lens of advertiser and publisher, but how we bring the right content at the right context for consumers. Because end of the day, like we all say, it's all about making advertising welcome. So if we start thinking from a consumer lens, it is more important for consumers that they get exposure in a brand safe and a suitable environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to go to Amlan on that note because he mentioned marketers cherry picking. Why don't you go next?
I think he mentioned it rightly, but I believe that it's a distance that both ends have to travel together, and then only it can be achieved. But with respect to brand safety, there are key three things that a marketer is concerned about in general, and they are sometimes related, sometimes very wide from each other. And that is one thing what I think Bharat mentioned clearly is the brand safe environment, whether the environment is right or not. Second thing is ad fraud, which I think Ashwani, you mentioned with the video next thing that you mentioned, that started with viewability actually being one of the biggest concerns. And
exactly, ad fraud, viewability, and brand safety.
So it's just viewability is one of the aspects, and there are clicks, frauds, impression frauds, and there are numerous type of frauds that we are dealing with as of today. Yes. And there are so many tools that we are looking forward to utilize, but everything is costly. So that as a marketer, for me, when I put emphasis on this from our side, marketer side, then it is turning out much more costlier to us with respect, because our media budgets, then you have to allocate certain percentage of budgets for devising on these tools or to check and balance mechanism. So if a trust is there between your publisher and between you, then that cost effectiveness can be passed to the right person, where you are getting it passed to somebody else, right? So that is something that we can achieve. And third aspect is the brand infringement part, where somebody is impersonating you and they're trying to, and which happens specifically for big corporates, example like Kevin Kever, where somebody is impersonating you as a recruiter, somebody is impersonating you who is getting on board as distributors. So you see that there are so many ads in the market that become a distributor, become a employee, all those things. So these are a couple of areas that from brand safety, that is a challenge that a corporate has, or because as marketer we handle all these aspects. These are the key challenges that we are addressing day in and day out. How much we are getting into the depth and how much we are able considering is something that is a matter of discussion with this panel. I think that would be what we're looking forward to.
Absolutely. No, it's brand imposterism, right? If I'm not wrong, that's the new thing. Yeah. No, I'll come back to you, Amlan. I have a lot of questions because it's interesting. You mentioned you have to pay a premium for it, right? Whether it's investing in tools or even whitelisting. You end up whitelisting websites and you pay a premium to be only on those websites. So it all costs money ultimately. Let's move to Amitabh.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for having me here. So if you personally ask me, the brand safety actually starts from what you stand for. So ultimately, we are also a brand by ourselves, right? So we have to live to our own users, and we have to create a brand identity for ourselves. So if you are responsible for your users, your every action is going to be defined from that aspect of it. And I think once you are being true for true to your users, not only will you see that most of the brand safety measures are already in place, you will also notice, and what we have noticed multiple times, is that the advertiser is ready to pay you much more than what they would pay otherwise. We have seen our eCPM shoot up as we brought more transparency into our system. We started categorizing our ad units very clearly as advertisements, by ensuring that we don't write any sponsored content without a disclaimer. We are heavily into affiliates. We are one of the top partners for multiple companies in affiliates. and we write our content with a disclaimer. We start our content with a disclaimer, and we are still noticing our revenues are shooting up. So I strongly feel that the advertiser, not just the advertiser, even the user appreciates when you clearly start mentioning what your advertisements are, what your content is. So I think when you when you have that thought process, automatically multiple things start coming on your mind. So when we're talking about cross-verifying our news, ensuring your quality content. This would definitely take place on priority when you're before transparency, and to bring transparency into the system, automatically you will start following IAB standards, you will start following a lot of other things. So I think brand safety is starts and ends with what brands are themselves standing for. And that I think would hold same for the advertiser, for the publisher. And yeah, I think that is the laying, the foundation for what we stand for.
Yeah, no, that's very well summed up. I'll come back to you as well, Amitabh, because you actually gave us an overview of the solutions as well, things that publishers can do, and a lot of ecosystem solutions as well. So that's interesting. Pankaj, what's your opening remark?
No, enough has been said about brand safety. And actually, it's a term that has exploded over the last few years in its use to describe topics in digital advertising. As Amlan said, ad fraud or viewability. But, I would like to add there is like user experience and a placement in the contextual appropriate environment.
Yeah.
And brand safety is one of the major challenge for the entire advertising industry. It is relevant not only to advertiser, but also to the publishers too. As Amitabh mentioned, talking about the user loyalty or how it positively impacts the CPMs. Because, when we talk about user loyalty, questionable ads that appears on the website, user complaints or simply cause used to disengage with the platform. So they look upon that, this particular ad is coming from a publisher. They are not saying that it is coming from a brand or any of these things. So they start to disengage. So it results in lower CTRs or, the click-through rates from the advertising point of view. And if you have good user engagement, positively, it will impact the CPMs, and you will see advertisers and marketers start paying extra or the premiums for the same inventory or the engaged users.
No, that's a very good point, because we're so close to the problem, we don't really see it the way a consumer sees it. She's just going to see the ad on a site and attribute that to the website and not so much the brand that has bought inventory. Very, very good point, Pankaj. Thank you for that. So before I launch into my first question, I just want to get the nomenclature right. How does brand safety differ from, scratch that. How are brand safety and brand suitability different? Is brand suitability like an upgraded version of brand safety? Are they dots along the same spectrum? Or is suitability a fancier term for safety? Or do they really mean different things for publishers? Bharat, can you rescue me here? Let's just set the nomenclature right.
So brand safety is more about the basic hygiene, what the brands are looking. No fraudulent traffic, no inhuman traffic. So these are basic hygiene factors which are now being controlled using technology. There are third-party verification tools who block ads when there is no human traffic, right? And at the same time, there are other tech nuances which our ecosystem face, which also bring a lot of fraudulent ways in which impressions are being burned. So these are all the brand safety side, the basic hygienes which everyone is following.
Okay.
Brand suitability is a little bit different, or I would say next step in terms of setting up the right context and the content in which brand would like to advertise. So again, referring back to the same example what I used, brand safety for a liquor client is not advertising on a platform which bring fraudulent clicks, inhuman traffic. Brand suitability for a liquor client would be not advertising anywhere closer to a kids content. So maybe a kids content would be a right placement for a cereal brand or a brand which is selling anything around kids toys or any product which is really recommended for them. But anything which is like a liquor or an auto, these brands would definitely would not want to advertise in an environment which is talking about the basic kids content. So that would be an easy example to understand suitability. Or other way, you can put some natural tragedy around earthquake or floods would be an ideal placement to advertise around charity funding for a brand like UNICEF Cry, but not for a PG brand asking you to buy a juice bottle or a cola bottle.
Okay, okay. Right. Yes.
As per brand safety deals with the controls to mitigate the potential damage to a brand reputation. That you are not seen with the content which is promoting any politics or drugs or any of this. And the others, the brand suitability largely deals with the targeting parameters such as viewability and the content agency. So that my possibly it's a brand safe content which is talking about say parenting, how Bharat mentioned about liquor, about parenting. Possibly a laptop ad will not be relevant, but maybe a baby care product which is there, it is more suitable for that particular kind of content. So it's in a way there's a brand safety and there's a brand suitability, whether that content is suitable to show that kind of an ad. Maybe this is to put it simply.
Interesting how the definitions also differ depending on where you're sitting. So suitability is more of a judgment call and safety is more like a a flaw with the programmatic funnel. Would that be appropriate?
It's not a flaw, I would say. Again, like some sort of inventory don't offer the brand safety which brand would require, and every brand has a tolerance limit, like it said. An e-commerce brand would have a different tolerance limit when it comes to advertising on news versus a FMCG or a luxury brand. They would have a different tolerance limit when it comes to something around the breaking news on digital. So again, it's not any flaw in the ecosystem how we buy ads. I would say we live in the ecosystem where every ad is not safe and every ad is not suitable. And as a buyer, as a seller, everyone has to decide what price we are paying for that particular impression. Like all GRPs are not equal, all impressions are not equal. Some impressions are viewable, some impressions are fraud, some impression are right in the context. So that way, it's part of the ecosystem. We have to live with it. There are ways in which you can control, you can mitigate, but to be very honest, you cannot have 100% security when you're buying digital ads that every impression will be safe and suitable. There has to be certain tolerance limit which everyone has to accept.
Very interesting. It's a matter of threshold, and that varies depending on what category and the context of it as well. Yeah. So Amlan, in your lexicon, are safety and suitability different, or are they pretty much the same thing? I mean, do you agree with all these definitions, or as a marketer, do you have your own?
No, they are close, but I very much agree with what Bharat said. The biggest difference between both of them is context. So brand safety is contextless in some sense, contextless. In brand suitability, context comes into the picture. So it gives you additional lever actually. It's a little enhanced form. So your I would say accuracy levels go higher because context come into the picture. For brand safety, it is more like a outer boundary that you have formed, which is your no risk zone in some sense. But brand suitability is clearly defined area. Your opportunity area can be defined very clear. So I think that's the big difference between. But
interestingly summed up.
Yeah,
that's good.
I'd like to, manifestations or advanced form of it's a development over what it has, a generation-wise development, I would say.
Exactly. It's a continuum, actually. Yeah, it just became more textured. Yeah, sure. I'd like the publishers to come in on this as well. What's in your lexicon? How do you look at safety and versus suitability? Mayura and Amitabh.
Yeah, so actually, I think in terms of from the advertiser's perspective, most of the things have been spoken, especially for when it comes to programmatic or a display advertising. But a lot of advertising today is also happening through content. Even before segregating display or content, I would say as to firstly what kind of advertisements are acceptable to you.
Right.
right from the kind of products or services that you are willing to allow or not. We as a group are very clear against betting advertisements. It's a conscious decision. It's not a legal decision or anything. It's a pure conscious decision. So very categorically, it may be one of the largest advertising it's one of the largest advertising community in India today, but as a conscious decision, we were very particular. We will not accept this. It is not right for our audience. We clearly see that yes, when we give we are going to define our audience, and we define the kind of audience that is going to come to our sites. So that is what our brand stands for. So it's from the publisher's perspective. It is not just about having the right place, right. I would say brand safety measures or brand. Of course, we are talking about algorithms over here, but then also about what advertisers to be allowed, and then from content perspective, what kind of a content are you allowing? So it's not that if you're having a sponsored content, are you actually labeling it as a sponsored content? But within the sponsored content also, what measures are you ensuring that you're not communicating anything that is irrelevant to our users? So I think that's extremely important to take care of.
Yeah. So, and not just different categories of advertisers, it's also different types of publishers. Maybe suitability matters more to some and safety to others. Mayura, where are you on this?
See, even for us, like, Amitabh rightly said, we're very particular about the kind of categories that advertise with us. Am I audible? Yeah. Yeah. So we're very particular with the kind of, categories that advertise with us. And we're also very particular about the kind of advertisements we deliver to our clients by the end of the day. We ensure that even if we're doing a native, even if we're doing any sort of content marketing, we ensure that the partner who's doing this with us is as credible, in the market as well. And also given the right kind of information that a consumer needs by the end of the day. As Amitabh said, even we're big into affiliates right now and content marketing, more than display. So that I think that is where you are more brand safe as as for an advertiser as well. So we're very, very particular about that. We're safe about that because by the end of the day, we all need to take care of and maintain the audience that we have, because without that, I don't think anybody is going anywhere by the end of the day. So yeah, it is also as publishers, I think that we can give in terms of, brand safety, we can give in more opportunity in terms of giving different types of advertisements on our platform, because we are a platform by the day. So, get a little there. Let's not be too jarring to our consumers and, turn them off like in the beginning itself. So be a little more friendly over there. So yeah, I think it's an intertwined rope, and I think both are extremely important for anybody who's in this field by the end of the day.
Absolutely, I hear you. Pankaj, is there an MJID perspective on suitability versus safety, or you want to jump in there, or should I move to my next question?
So basically it's the same, like whatever everyone has said, it's quite relevant. And actually, talking about content marketing has been evolving. And end of the day, the entire contextual advertising or contextual intelligence is based on the content, what kind of content is being created or what kind of content is there on a publisher. And based on user interest or context, the ads are being served. So, that is there. So brand safety and suitability go hand in hand, and it is still work in progress, I can say.
Right. No, absolutely. That's great. Now, I want to know, where will the solution to brand safety come from? Okay. This is something Amitabh touched upon briefly in his opening remark, but, expound on that. And I'd like everyone to come in here. Is it a tech problem at its core? Is it all about the programmatic funnel? Are the solutions going to come from tools, or is it systemic, more of an ecosystem problem? But then the hassle with that is when it's everybody's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility. That's what we've seen. Ultimately, the advertiser's money and reputation is on the line. So is it a case of buyer beware? Should the advertiser who's actually investing in digital inventory, create a solution for the community? Or is it something publishers need to solve? Because ultimately it's their advertising revenue as well. So, while yes, it is a joint thing, like Mayura beautifully said, it's an intertwined rope. But where will the solution really germinate? Where should it germinate from? Ideally.
Maybe I can go first.
Sure.
So both the coins are right. It's a flip side of the narrative. Like the buyer beware has to be there. Advertiser has to do the use of both manual ways in terms of selecting the content and creating their own inclusion list, what environment they would like to advertise. And on the same time, it's also the use of technology, what buyers use right now, which can help you do pre-bid, which means when you're bidding for a specific ad slot, it can block if it's not a safe environment or there are certain keywords or it's not a human traffic. And then same ways on the publisher side, it's also a mutual shared responsibility, not just as part of the same ecosystem, but also that their whole platform depends on the user data monetization as well as the real estate in which a brand has to advertise, right? So think about the real estate property in which a brand is going to put their banner, and at the same time, the consumer is coming and spending their productive time to consume certain type of a content. So for a publisher also, it's also a big responsibility now that they control and manage both the safety as well as the suitability side. Safety, definitely, it's not just about putting technology, but also verifying what type of content you are releasing. The whole idea behind the problem that the fake news is bringing is also part of somewhere down the line the safety concerns which advertisers have with certain news platforms. And on the other side, suitability is also how publishers select once the advertiser has done the booking, where is the ad going to run, in which page, in which content, in which context. So it's definitely both the parties in the ecosystem who come together, do the handshake, and with the use of technology and certain manual ways of selecting the media, because like I said, although technology has done a lot of advancement, but in a market like India, where we have so many languages, we have so many nuances around the vernacular content, around the video content, there are certain missing gaps in the use of technology. One of the missing gap is that current available tools, they are not compliant enough to understand all our vernacular languages, to understand whether these keywords are safe or suitable. And at the same time, the technology has not yet matured to see what's there inside the video. So maybe the tag on the video when the video is uploaded on a UGC platform is right, but inside the video, someone is dying because of scarcity of food, and someone is advertising about the food. So definitely there is a gap. So both manual ways of buying, selecting the content, placement, which publishers you want to advertise, and the use of technology is the right combination for both the parties.
Okay, fine. When you say both advertiser and publisher, and of course all the third party and third party vendors and the firms trying to solve this problem, middlemen. Okay. In fact, as you say that, Bharat, there's a question there that says, does the problem of brand safety worsen for regional language sites? So I'll let Mayura come in here and Amitabh after that, because it's a UI UX thing as well for Indian language sites. So what do you make of that question?
Definitely, but I think the tech now has become a little better in safeguarding that, I must say, because the kind of problem we faced around 5 years ago is definitely not the kind of problems we face now, because we've had some obnoxious ads come as well. But by the end of the day, it is a road that has to be met by both. In terms of publishing, how do you ensure safety? Like, for example, we're strictly news, so we ensure that we have a fact check desk with us. We ensure that we have, we have a fact check desk, and we ensure that we have the correct content, not the correct, I would say, the factually correct content going out as much as possible. Of course, there will be human errors, but that is one. But at the same time, when an advertiser, when a marketer is placing, they have to ensure that by the end of the day, both the roads have to meet. And tech has a long way to go for regional languages, because it's very difficult to pick up. And even with social media platforms, sometimes there are a lot of misunderstandings, and tech has to pick up with regional languages. But I must say it's much better now, and we've come a long way there. Definitely. It is a little difficult though, but yeah, it's all right.
Right. Yeah. So I digressed with that question there. But, Amlan and Amitabh, as to my previous question, where's the solution going to come from? And, on whose shoulders is the onus really?
Can I'll take that. So basically, I think from tech point of view, there are a lot of advancements that are taking place, and both Amlan and Bharat would agree with me. And as Mayur also mentioned, that things are improving even for vernaculars. Yet, of course, as that the offerings develop, the tools also will need to develop further. So, for the very simple aspect that an advertiser will, of course, evaluate the domain authority of a particular domain from publisher's point of view. I'm not talking from video point of view per se, right? And domain authority is something that would come from the quality of content that is being placed over the years, apart from other aspects of it. But that definitely contributes a lot, because then your the entire ecosystem is based on that. Your viewability, your fill rates. If you're not having a good suitable content, if you're having a lot of algorithm shows, if you're having fake news, or content with wrong keywords, your fill rates will never be good. Okay, and you can also see, the advertiser can also actually view from the historical bidding prices and the way they have grown over the years for any particular domain, and these are the few things that an advertiser for display can always evaluate. So they are not direct tools, but there are multiple other ways that you can evaluate for a particular domain per se. I'm not talking about a specific page or a specific news. For news publishers, that still remains quite a lot of, it's a big challenging problem, because especially crime related news, if there's something, some wrong incident that has happened in some particular part of the city, it's important for us to report. It has negative keywords. Now you have to, at the most, you can curb down the images, photographs, XYZ, but then yes, that's an important news. You cannot do away with that news. What is more important, what I completely want to add on to what Bharat was trying to specify in terms of it's a responsibility of the ecosystem, what you also mentioned, is especially when it comes to contents. Still we don't have tools that are measuring sponsored content. And that responsibility completely lies on publisher, I think. That is very, very important, not just in terms of the quality of content, but how you're trying to showcase that this content is sponsored, how transparent you are, what kind of content you are accepting. Because you see, the importance of image advertisement and textual advertising is very different. And that is why we are seeing growth in native. That is why we are seeing how natives also doing extremely well worldwide. So there is, because it's somewhere, it bridges the gap. Native advertising bridges the gap between the two. So it's, I think, extremely important for the entire ecosystem to work towards it.
Absolutely. Amlan, come in here, because I can't help but notice how a lot of these solutions will make a dent in the advertiser's wallet at the end of the day. So is that something, you grapple with?
Actually, I was about to say that I would say something which can come out to be really non-likable with me on the panel.
Go ahead.
But we should have some regulations in place, like ASCII is there for, controlling certain things. So when it is left for, when it's a problem of many, it is not a problem for any. That's the problem, actually. Exactly. So if a regulation comes into place, like any typical financial audit norms, if all the larger publishers are required to publish and get their, this delivery audited by some third-party vendor, and it becomes a regular norm, then the problem will be solved to a great extent. I'm not saying the world is so clean, but at least to some extent it will solve your purpose.
So, but do you mean industry bodies, or do you mean independent tech?
So it can be it has to be an industry body, because third-party player will always have certain interest in mind with respect to how to grow their business also, and which can sometimes turn out to be very costly for me. So suppose the bigger the publisher I go with, the more expensive it is for me to deploy a tool. because it's
Absolutely.
clearly impression based. The larger the impressions getting delivered, the costlier it is for me. So if a third party body is there, I would say an industry body is there, and then we are able to institutionalize or some guidelines, which becomes a yearly publishing norm reports on which we can, rely on, then I think it would make job easier for, it may sound complicated for the publishers initially, but I think that will be a healthy practice that comes into picture.
Yeah, I hope the ecosystem is listening. Pankaj, what do you think about that? Do you agree with Amlan?
Yeah, definitely. So, a lot of things has been said by Amitabh and Bharat and Amlan and everyone. So, in addition to, the starting point of an advertising starts from publisher, where you have the content, whether it's an audio content, video content, or maybe, written content. So in addition to offering access to premium, trustworthy web content, there's also responsibility on the platform that they should be fully compliant with the industry initiatives designed to maintain media clarity across the supply chain and enable a secure trading by authorized buyers and sellers, such as ad.txt or seller.json, and recently introduced buyer JSON. So, these are the ways in which you can identify whether, who is buying or who is selling. And while the algorithms and AI advancements have their uses, insufficiently moderated technologies can spell disaster for brands. So, even when we talk about in the world of technology, it is important that how we utilize technology at the end of the day, that is more crucial. And it's a responsibility of everyone, because it starts from publisher and it ends with advertisers. So, advertisers wants to show their ads to an user. So, there are three parties: advertiser, brand or advertiser, publisher, and a user. So, all put together, everyone is responsible in this game, and the higher responsibility lies on publishers and platforms.
Okay, fantastic. Great. We're out of time. Thank you for your questions, audience. I'm very sorry we couldn't take all of them, but would the panel be available on LinkedIn to answer these questions if the audience wants to reach out to you? Yeah?
Definitely.
Sure.
Sure. Of course.
Okay, great. Okay, that's fantastic. That's all from me. Benita, over to you.
Esteemed panelists, moderator, such an insightful session. And thank you, audience, who joined us across the social media platforms today. We look forward to having you all over tomorrow for the last day of the third edition of Digipub Week. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Fantastic.